All right, so fuck Chicago. And when I say fuck Chicago, I don't mean the entire place. I really mean the weather in Chicago. Um, it's ridiculous. If I wanted to live in a place that's going to turn me into an icicle every time I go outside, then I would revisit my childhood and go back in time to when we were playing hide and seek. And I thought a good idea for a hiding spot would be the fucking freezer. So if you have money, I know what you're thinking. Oh, you can't fit in a freezer as a kid. That makes no sense. I'm from the country, so for us, a freezer was just a big fucking box, and you can put a whole lot of shit in it. But it was just a big fucking box. It was not like a freezer in a fucking fridge. It wasn't the same thing. So me and my cousins, we were playing hide and seek. I was really bad at hide and seek. I never won, and for some reason, I had the genius idea to hide in a fucking freezer. So everyone was going around looking for a hiding spot. It was my cousin Elroy. He was going to be the one that was going to look for everybody. And Elroy wasn't too smart. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to hide in the freezer because I'm the smart one. At least that's what I was thinking. So I hid in the freezer. I got in the freezer and I was so hyped. I'm like, yo, I'm going to win this shit. I'm going to win. Because none of these niggas are going to get in this freezer or are going to even think about getting in the freezer. Let me tell you how smart I was. To get in the freezer, even though the freezer was big, to fit in it, I had to take shit out. So there was evidence that I was in the freezer just sitting on the table in the kitchen. I didn't think that shit through. What I also was not smart enough to do was turn the freezer off. So even though I'm sitting in the freezer, it's cold as shit. I hear footsteps. I'm like, oh, I'm smart. I'm gonna win this shit. These niggas are dumb. These niggas are so fucking stupid. I'm the smart one. I read the first 5 Harry Potter books. We couldn't afford the 6th one, but I read 5 of them. I'm smarter than these niggas. They're not gonna come in this freezer. They're not even gonna think about it. So it's cold. 5 minutes pass. I'm still hearing footsteps. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna win because they've passed by this freezer or Elroy's passed by this freezer like 3 times. Obviously, he doesn't know where I am, or he would have looked by now. So it's getting cold, but I'm resolute in my decision to stay in the freezer because I'm like, I'm gonna win. I'm gonna win, even though it's really fucking cold. So 5 minutes pass, and I start to get a little colder. I'm like, oh shit, well, it's really cold. How's this game not over yet? All right, well, I'm just gonna stay in the freezer because I'm gonna win. Whatever. I can take this shit. All right, so a few more minutes pass, and I noticed that at first I was hearing footsteps of one person, but I start to hear more footsteps. So I'm like, okay, he's found some people. All right, that happens. It's whatever. Now they're teaming up to look for me. Probably, I'm probably the last person at this point. And the more times I hear footsteps, I'm like, okay, well, I win, right? Because they don't know where I am. They've passed by me like a few times. But just to make sure I was going to win, I stayed in there a few more minutes. I'm fucking shivering at this point, mind you. I'm cold as fuck. The footsteps stop. And I start to hear giggling. I'm like, okay, well, that's weird. They're laughing, but I'm not really thinking about, oh, they know where I am. All right, okay, well, they're giggling. I'm really fucking cold. It's time to win this game. So I go to lift up the freezer, and the shit wouldn't move. The shit would not move. So I'm like, okay, well, what the fuck is there? I know there's not a lock on this bitch, so I'm like trying to lift it up, and it won't budge. And the giggling just gets louder and louder. And it took a moment, but then I realized these motherfuckers, they locked me in the freezer. I don't know at what point. I have no idea at what point they did all this shit. But something tells me that after the first 5 minutes, someone passed by, saw all the shit on the table, and they automatically knew that I was in the freezer. But instead of being nice and opening the freezer, saying, I found you, ha ha ha, you know, let me take my shit, they concocted this scheme to, okay, I'm going to find everybody else and we're going to lock this nigga in the freezer. Yo, I was in the freezer for like, I lifted the shit up, it wouldn't budge. And then as I got so pissed, I'm like, all right, y'all can let me out. And they're like, why don't you use a fucking spell to get your non-smart ass out of this fucking freezer? Yo, I'm locked in this bitch. I'm like, I'm gonna die. Because they're not gonna let me out. We're kids. Kids don't have a conscience. They don't know. They'll fuck around and kill somebody on accident. So I'm sitting in a fucking freezer about to catch fucking frostbite, trying like, yo, I'm serious, let me the fuck out. Like, it's the coldest I've ever been in my entire life. Ever been. I've been to fucking Colorado in the mountains, freezing my ass off on skis. That moment prepared me for being in a different climate, because nothing can compare to how cold I was in that fucking freezer. I felt like a fucking icicle. I was gonna die in that bitch. And they would not have let me out of the freezer. I'm sure they would not have let me out of the freezer if it was not for my aunt getting home and seeing a whole bunch of shit on her freezer. Because the first thing I hear whenever she opens the door, like, yo, get all that shit off the freezer. So they took all the shit off, and I could hear, I'm like fucking pushing the shit open. Finally, I can get out the freezer. And my aunt looked at me, and she must have thought she saw a ghost, because she called the fucking ambulance. Yo, them niggas almost killed me. When the ambulance got there, like, they were concerned. I thought, okay, I was just fucking cold for a little while. Nah, nigga, I must have looked like I must have looked like one of them niggas from that movie when the fucking airplane landed in the fucking mountains, or not landed, crashed in the fucking mountains, and them niggas was stuck there, so they had to eat each other and shit. I must have looked like one of them niggas, because the concern on the adult's face when they saw me I saw the look in their face. They look horrified. So, yeah, long story short, fuck Chicago, because every time I go there, I think about that moment.